former President Trump, speaking of this, is laying out his plan to, in his words, stop World War III. He says he'd end the war in Ukraine, and here's one of his points.
Finally, we have to finish the process we began under my administration of fundamentally reevaluating NATO's purpose and NATO's mission. Our foreign policy establishment keeps trying to pull the world into conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. But the greatest threat to Western civilization today is not Russia. It's probably, more than anything else, ourselves and some of the horrible USA-hating people that represent us. It's the abolition of our national borders. It's the failure to police our own cities. It's the destruction of the rule of law from within. It's the collapse of the nuclear family and fertility rates like nobody can believe is happening. It's the Marxists who would have us become a godless nation worshiping at the altar of race and gender. And
you know what's boring to me? What's boring to me is the hatred for America. Yeah. The hatred from America that you hear spewing from Donald Trump's mouth. Donald Trump hated America before he became president of the United States, talked about how the American dream was dead. Yeah, try telling that to the immigrants, the migrants, the refugees, risking their lives to come to the United States of America because what do they believe in? The American dream. In fact, talk to immigrants that get here. They will tell you about the American dream. It's talked about all over the world, all over the world. And here's Donald Trump. Jen Psaki, it's crazy. I mean, Donald Trump hates America. You listen to him talking about the United States, the United States, the country, as Fox News anchors used to remind us, the country that has fed and freed. Wait a second, that was Roger Ailes who would say, this country has fed and freed more people than any other planet in the history of the world. And Roger was right on that one. We have, and we continue to. The United States, we won World War I. We won World War II with the help of our allies. We were the driving force. We were the arsenal of democracy. Look what we're doing, helping Ukraine push back against war crimes daily. And yet all Donald Trump does, all other people do is they bash the United States of America. They attack the United States military, our men and women in the armed forces. They attack our intel community. They hate America by their own words. And if they hate it so much, why don't they move to Russia? Russia will take them. They've taken Steven Seagal. They'll take Donald Trump and everybody else saying that the U.S. military is going to use helicopters that it used in Afghanistan to kill Americans who voted for Trump. Like, they hate us. They hate America. So why are they still here?
Well, you heard it here first. You're sending people to Russia. So Putin, welcome some Republican candidates. Look, I think, Joe, it's Trump, as you said. It's DeSantis. It's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. If you listen to the rhetoric from the most powerful voices in the Republican right wing of the party, they are painting the country and painting the future as this dark, depressing, ominous dystopia, right? That everything is terrible. All things are terrible. Everything is dark. It's all, I think Ron DeSantis actually called it a wokeocracy, which I don't even know what that means, but I just feel like I needed to use that phrase. And that is not who the country is, of course, but that's also not what people in the country want to vote for. We're always a work in progress, but people want optimism. They want solutions. They want something that they can get excited about and support that's going to make their lives better. And instead, it's this race to a darker dystopia on the right, which is kind of fascinating, and I also don't think is the right strategy to win.
Well, it's just a lie. And how crazy Donald Trump says the American dream is dead and America is a horrible place. Then he's elected and then he loses. And then suddenly America is this horrible place again. You know, David Ignatius, you've been You've been across the world. You've seen the good that America does. We make mistakes. We talk about it here. And we are struggling towards becoming a more perfect union every day. At the same time, you know, Abraham Lincoln said America was the last best hope for a dying world. Ronald Reagan said that America was a city shining on a hill brightly for all the world to see. And yes, maybe inside America, sometimes we don't recognize it, but go around the world and there are millions and millions of people who do. And yet Donald Trump says, instead of a city shining brightly on the hill for all the world to see, he says America is the greatest threat to Western civilization. Those are words taken straight out of the mouth of Orban.
Well, I absolutely agree that Trump's criticism of the United States is misplaced and can be very harmful to us. I would say, Joe, that the biggest threat to our future, in my judgment, does not lie outside our borders. It lies within America. Unless we can make our democracy work better, unless we can get our economy going reliably, strongly, unless we can make people feel they're all part of one country that they believe in, we're in trouble. And so I think in that sense, looking inward, taking care of our country, of our economy, does make sense. It's something that I think Joe Biden has tried to do. It's been a centerpiece of his foreign policy from the beginning. He said, I want a foreign policy for the middle class, meaning that everything we do needs to benefit ordinary Americans. And I think that's right. So I'm in sympathy with the idea that our problems aren't just overseas; they're here too.
Yeah, but you know, John Heilemann, so much of it are problems that are ginned up by people who say they want a civil war, by people who say they want two Americas. You know, unemployment, 50-year low, dollar at a generational high, childhood poverty at 60-year lows, teen pregnancy at 60-year lows. You look at the U.S. economy, we're still the standard, still the strongest economy. Our military, relative to the rest of the world, stronger than it's been since 1945. And yet all these Republicans do, when they're not in power, if they lose one election, they hate America. They hate our military. They hate our intel services. They say America's going to hell, when in fact, you look at the numbers, we're doing pretty darn well.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Joe, it's the out of power party is going to, they're not going to say, hey, America's doing great. It's morning again in America. That's an argument for sticking with Joe Biden and the Democrats. So there's going to be a critique. The question is kind of what the kind of tenor of the critique is and what the proposed vision for making America better. Both parties are going to have competing visions. I think, you know, what you guys are all, we've been talking about this for months, is if the thing for Donald Trump and for Ron DeSantis and the rest of the Republicans who want to be first the Republican standard bearer and then the next president of the United States on the Republican side is, you know, what's the path to being able to win that Republican nomination fight? And, you know, it's then the case that Trump's base has been a grievance caucus, you know, since the 2015, 2016 experience for Trump, got him the nomination, made him the president. It didn't keep him the president in 2020. The grievance caucus was not enough to win then, and it hasn't been enough for Republicans to win ever since, as we pointed out repeatedly. In 2020, down ballot, it wasn't. If you were with Trump, it didn't help. It didn't help the election deniers in 2022. It didn't help Republicans to fare better in the midterm elections more broadly. And the question right now is for the Republican Party, you know, saying that there are things that Republicans think that Joe Biden's not good at. They're not doing well at. That's what the election's going to be about. That's all right.
Right.
The question is just whether the Rage Caucus and the Snowflake Caucus and the Grievance Caucus is going to dominate this Republican nominating fight or not. And right now, if you believe, as to go back to our first topic in this morning A block here, is that it's a two-person fight. Really, only two people right now anybody think can be the Republican nominee: DeSantis and Donald Trump, and they're both racing further and further, not just to the right, because I don't think that's the right way to describe it. They're
That's
racing
not the
further
right.
and further into the dystopian, as Jen Psaki put it, sketching out the dystopian view of America and not putting forward any kind of an optimistic vision for how to fix it. It's just going to be all complaint, all grievance, all rage, all snowflakeism. If that's where the Republican Party is going, if those are the two main guys, I'll say that there's an opening for somebody else who can come in and make a different kind of critique of Biden and a different kind of vision for where to take the country.
Yeah, I mean, and also you forgot a little bit of autocracy, or maybe a lot of autocracy sprinkled in there, and just look at their words, look at their actions, look what they've done, and yes, criticize Joe Biden. I mean, there are things to criticize Joe Biden about. You could go after whether you're a Republican and you want to go after Afghanistan, his retreat from Afghanistan. You want to talk about him spending too much money on this program or that program. You want to blame him for inflation with the COVID Relief Act. You want to talk about the border. Talk about all of those things. We've talked about them on the show here, right? So there are legitimate things to criticize Joe Biden about and have a debate over. But talking about how America is the greatest threat to Western civilization, I just think it's really important to keep things in perspective here, Maura. We have a guy who talked about American carnage at his inaugural address when crime was at a 50-year low, illegal crossings across the southern border was at a 50-year low. The economy was doing pretty darn well, a hell of a lot better than when he left. But he talked about American carnage because he wasn't in office. And at the same time, he was talking about on our show, how he respected Vladimir Putin so much more than Barack Obama, that Putin was a strong leader. And we kept saying, well, he kills journalists, he kills politicians. He was a strong leader. And so he respects Vladimir Putin while attacking the United States. And then, of course, at the beginning of the Russian invasion, what did he say? He said it was beautiful, his words, said Putin was savvy for doing it. And he said, we need that here in the United States. This is Donald Trump's vision of America. You talk about dystopian. His vision of America is being a Putin-like leader. Don't trust me. Trust Donald Trump's own words.